Welcome to the Digital Dreaming Off the Ground podcast. It is a beautiful Sunday, and it's been a minute. Obviously, Super Bowl's wrapped up, so we're gonna get right into it. Obviously, we're gonna talk about the Sacramento Kings, baby, and everything else. On the Sunday, obviously, the last NFL weekend was obviously over a month ago. so, obviously, Chiefs beat the Eagles 38-35. The last episode of the podcast, my co-host Cortez Branch, I predicted the Eagles to Chiefs to win 33-29. So close, but a little bit off, by a point, in the margin of defeat. Patrick Mahomes 183 yards, 106 yards, 3 touchdowns, Super Bowl MVP. So pretty much, I think that was to be expected. Given how well the Eagles, sorry, not Eagles, but how well the Chiefs have played all year. Obviously, given the Niners fits every time we play, looking like they're trying to be a dynasty. So not much more to say about that. So kind of right getting into the Kings now. I mean, I think De'Aaron Fox, obviously for the past 8 games has had 30 plus points per game, and on 50% shooting. And he's the first player to do that since Michael Jordan did it in 1990, I believe, eight. So it's pretty remarkable. And obviously, the Kings, outside of last night's loss to the T Wolves, have won 5 straight since the All Star break. Holding on to that, third seed, pat. Obviously, the Warriors are creeping up in there. So it does look like it's going to be, a bit of a challenge, to continue, locking into that top 3, top 4 seed, heading into the playoffs. But I'm personally excited to see, how well the Kings can, maneuver and how well they can compete. Not only on these next couple games, but ultimately, once they actually are able to clinch the playoff spot, make history in terms of snapping the North American record, 16 straight and seasons without a playoff appearance, in all 4 major professional sports here in America. I think that's going to be a moment. I do think the Kings, granted, they're going to have to obviously make some adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. I do like them in a 7-game series. Hopefully, in the first round. As obviously I called in the Jim Rome show, last year, was it back in November, stating that I do think the Kings can get over 50 wins and win a playoff series. I don't see any reason why they still can't do that. But I do think it's going to require considered effort, to continue winning. If they continue playing, at this rate and at this pace, then they can definitely run the table in terms of getting to a 50 plus, win season, and ultimately, getting to the playoffs and winning a playoff series for the first time since 2000, what, 5, 6. So, obviously, it's been a while since the Kings have, but it's an exciting time to be a Kings fan. I do think De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, being the all-stars that they are, obviously, it's and being the first 2 players to make the all-star game since Peja and Brad Miller did in 2004. It's definitely an exciting time, to be a Kings fan. And, there's a lot of youth and a lot to look forward to in the future. Going back to the greatest show on court days, right? When Chris Webber, Peja, Jay Will, White Chocolate, Vlade Divac, and Doug Christie, the whole gang, is basically assembled. And, when they won a franchise record 61 games and, got that #1 seed, in the 2001-2002 season to ultimately lose to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and an all-time great series, and obviously the Hall of Famers on both sides of the ball, for both teams, right? Chris Webber, Vlade Divac, and then you got, Mitch Richmond, ironically on the Lakers side of the ball, Kobe, Shaq, right? I think there was something to be said about the Kings at that point in time. I actually watched the Hulu documentary about the Truth About Showtime, and it was pretty cool to see Sacramento kind of get that shout out and get that love on that documentary, on the docuseries. So I think ultimately the Kings are on a pretty great spot right now. Obviously, it's going to take, like I said, considerable effort. I think Mike Brown has done a great job on the defensive side, but the defensive rating and the defense, obviously last night, kind of showed it. You can't fall down 17 and expect to just kind of swarm back and win, but they did get really close to doing that last night against the T-Wolves, right? Obviously, Anthony Edwards is one of the great premier young talents in the NBA. So you have to obviously, tip your cap to the T-Wolves. But, I do think, moving forward, there's a lot for the Kings to build upon. Regardless of how this season ends up, once they clinch the playoff spot, once they get into that playoffs, and hopefully, they end up winning. If not, I mean, this season is definitely, a lot to build on. They're 5 games away, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 5 games away from achieving their first ever, season over 500 for the past 16 years. So, I mean, it's definitely a great time to be a Kings fan. I mean, I was at the Lakers game, and now we're going to transition over to LeBron James, right? Obviously, the NBA all-time leading scorer. Passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I do have his autograph, and I will share that as my background next episode, probably. As well as Kareem's. So, I think LeBron, obviously, what he means to the sport of NBA, and what he means to the sport of basketball, being the NBA brand ambassador and doing it at such a high level for so long. I think it really speaks to kind of, just who he is, as an athlete, right? I mean, for myself and many others, who grew up watching LeBron, his early years, through high school, watching him take, a 22-year-old LeBron take a Cleveland Cavaliers team to the finals, and then, going to Miami, finally, getting the monkey off his back, a proverbial monkey off his back, but then going back to Cleveland, furthering the monkey that was still on his back, by snapping the 52-year long Cleveland sports curse, and then obviously going to LA and being able to win a championship when Kobe Bryant passed away. I was there for Kobe night 2-3 years ago. So I mean, LeBron is definitely has definitely been an ambassador to the NBA, and he's definitely proven his worth as one of the greatest all-time players, right, in NBA history, right up there with Michael Jordan. But anyways, I think with looking forward and onwards, obviously LeBron being out, Lakers have to play the Warriors tonight. The Kings, we definitely need that help, right, from the Lakers, right, kind of snap to kind of the hot streaking Warriors. But I mean, I don't see it happening because of the fact that the Warriors are just kind of on a tear right now. I mean, they've won the last 5 straight. Obviously, they're unbeatable at home, right? But I think for us to really, for the Kings to really kind of stay lockstep, with teams like the Grizzlies and Denver, it's going to take concerted efforts to from get other teams to, and a little bit of luck and help, to help kind of knock down some of those top 4 seeds, top 5 seeds where the Warriors are right now, the top 4, top 5, right? Um, Moving onwards, obviously John Morant with the gun. Not really sure more to say about that. I think whatever. I mean, it is what it is. All talk shows are going to talk about that. Outside of that, Luka Doncic and Devin Booker getting into a heated tussle last night. I think that was a testament to kind of how great the competition is between the young talents and the premier talents in the NBA. Kevin Durant, KD, obviously, doing his thing. Obviously, I mean, not more needs to be said there. But I do think, again, back to the Kings and back to kind of the playoffs. It's gonna be tough sledding. It's gonna be an uphill climb, because the Kings having to either play the Mavericks or having to play the Suns at some point, playing whoever, granted they are able to make it advance out of the first round of the playoffs. Granted they actually clinched that first round, playoff, first round playoff spot. I think then it's really the defensive side of the ball is a little bit troubling because of the fact that if you saw in the T Wolves how Anthony Edwards played last night, and basically just how the team has kind of just been not they've allowed 50% shooting above this I guess above 50% shooting for the past couple games. I think they're going to have to tighten that up, right? But I'm sure many of our Kings fans agree with me. I was really hoping Monte McNair was going to be able to get maybe backup center. There's a litany of second round picks. He decided not to trade away any of those picks because he believed the team at its core. He didn't want to interrupt with its chemistry. He believes it's perfect as is. We did see Alex Len come out and get some action last night in substitution for Sabonis. So I mean, ultimately, I mean, talking about kind of how the Kings and kind of how this team is going to play on in the playoffs. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how I guess when Sabonis is subbed out, who's going to really step up and kind of be that glass eater. I'm not really sure if they really have a glass eater right now. And I think like it would be interesting to see if they could make a move in the off season for maybe a Pascal Siakam or another kind of like a stretch big who can really crash the board. So I mean, but outside of that, I think looking forward to the postseason, it's gonna be a good one, right? It's gonna be a great one, just to see how the Kings are able to perform. It's a really just again more exciting time today. I went to the gym this morning. I passed the light beam sign down in downtown. On my way to 24 hours. So I mean, any Kings fan listening to this, obviously any Kings fan on Twitter, if you follow me, if you're connected, right, and or on LinkedIn, whatever, right. I think it's definitely a great time for us, the city of Sacramento, right. It's been a long time coming. So, I think I also saw something interesting, kind of from the King side, someone saying, oh, yeah, Boogie Cousins, doesn't hold a candle to Fox because of Fox's leadership and his intangibles. And that's all, kind of both sides of the argument being that Fox, having a much bit deeper roster, Boogie obviously not being able to, bring the team, past the cusp, but being able to play well individually, right? There's a lot to be said, right, about that. But I think, if Boogie was able to be given a roster that was, pretty kind of, obviously, competitive, which he never had, we might be having different discussion. For example, if Boogie had this roster, right, maybe he'd be also in the same, the Kings would be in the same spot as they are right now, if not better, right? Because Boogie had some all-time great seasons in Sacramento as well as outside of it when he went to New Orleans. So, I think these are, I mean, these hypotheticals are fun. So speaking of hypotheticals, we're going to switch topics, obviously, to NFL, right? Currently the 49ers, right? John Lynch was on record, he's at the scouting combine for the draft. He was on record basically stating kind of and that, they're going to have to kind of look in the QB market and, see what's out there, right? Obviously with Trey, coming back from injury, Brock, rehabbing and, his inflammation in his elbow, delaying his surgery. I think, it's a smart move to see who's out there, but, ultimately some of the options such as Derek Carr or Baker, I mean, I think, they need to figure out who's the most inexpensive kind of cost feasible option, right? Because the game isn't built on the QB, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers is way too. I mean, $60 million a year for a 39-year-old Aaron Rodgers is not feasible, honestly, at this point. And with all the drama going on in Green Bay, that if you haven't been paying attention, if you haven't paid attention, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I think that's just not something I think the 49ers, front office manager would entertain, unless the price is right. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. I mean, John Lynch has reached out to. I think John Lynch may or may not have already reached out to Tom Brady. Maybe, Tom Brady at the age of 46, right? I mean, Derek Carr obviously wanting $35 million a year, definitely not going to work with the cap and, the basically the dead cap hit. So, I mean, I think ultimately, looking at where, the Niners kind of stand right now, it's going to be interesting to see kind of, where they end up, right? With the QB market, obviously Jimmy's probably not going to be your next season, right? So, I mean, that's why I'm interested to see, who's going to be that third kind of QB. Now, the NFL Rules Committee is also proposing a new change to where teams could carry three quarterbacks on the roster. So that will also be interesting because Chris Seamack proposed that, not too long ago. I'm interested to see, how that plays out. I'm just interested to see how it all shapes out, right? I mean, obviously, the Niners, this offseason, there's a lot of free agents, obviously as well, unrestricted free agents for the Niners. So it's going to be, hopefully, the cap and all the different types of challenges that the Niners are going to have to face, they're able to overcome it and retain some of that talent, right? Trey Lance being a developmental still project at this point, right? I mean, I don't know what to expect from Trey at this point, and just like many of us don't know, right? More likely than not, if things still remain the way they are, Trey will be the starting quarterback for Week 1. He's had only 3 games so far. We've seen kind of almost a regression last season because of the fact he played. But obviously the flip side of that is he played in monsoon. He didn't really have everything kind of clicking for him, right? So I mean, hopefully he can use this offseason to get better. I'm not really in the Trey or Purdy camp. I don't really care who's the quarterback. I don't really care about the narratives behind either one. I just want, the team to finally get a franchise quarterback and to stay healthy. Because when you consider the fact that the last franchise quarterback to stay healthy for 2 full seasons was Colin Kaepernick back in 2013, 2014, it's a little frustrating to see kind of, quarterbacks get injured year in, year out, not just quarterbacks, but many players year in, year out. Shanahan and Lynch have done a great job. I'm not going to criticize, the regime or the administration, but, when you see kind of a pattern, right, you do have to ask the question, kind of what's going on, right? So hopefully, the quarterback situation is resolved. Hopefully they're able to add some depth at that position. They do also need to figure out, if we're talking about the draft, right, they need to figure out who's going to be the backup tight end for Kittle, right? Because Ross has not really been utilized for the past couple of years. Not sure why. They do need to figure out, who's going to be, obviously, backup time for George Kittle, if McGlinchey is gone, the right tackle, who's going to be filling that spot of the offensive line on the right side. They do need to shore up the right side of the offensive line. We'll see what happens with the free market, right? Or sorry, the free agency market, right? But I do think, defense as well, right? Got to prioritize, some more linemen, build out the interior line. ultimately, secondary as well, also been Achilles for, during some points in the season. Though we did see some really great development, right? This playoffs, this postseason with from Lenore. Obviously, Gibson, if Gibson retires, right, you're gonna have to look into that option too. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, ultimately, I think it's going to come down to kind of what the cap dictates, who Lynch sees and obviously, too many variables at play, but it was pretty cool to hear Rand Carthen talk about kind of how the analytics kind of plays out in the draft room when Lynch was looking towards, and Lynch and him were going back and forth between linebacker he wanted, and ultimately another fifth round player who ended up, being pretty good. So, and that same kind of process was used last year in the draft to draft Mr. Relevant Brock Purdy, probably arguably the best Mr. Relevant in recent memory, if not all times so far. Especially as a rookie. So, I mean, I do hope that, the Niners are able to kind of address most of the needs, in the draft if they can't capitalize the free agency market. So, a lot to look out for there. And obviously back to NBA, obviously the Kings, coming up, I think what, 37-26 right now, right? So 11 games over 500. It's a great time, right now for the Kings. Hopefully they keep up that momentum. I hope that they can get at least, 45 wins this year, if not 40, above, 45, 46 wins, or whatever it takes to just get a top 4 playoff spot, because that's all I care about. I think, just seeing them in the playoffs and being able to see a playoff game, and we'll see, if those tickets sell out so quickly, right? Then, maybe or maybe not, I or, anyone else will be able to attend that game. So, it's a pretty, again, fun time to be a Kings fan, exciting time to see what happens. Anyways, pivoting on to the WWE, Elimination Chamber, Sami Zayn lost to Roman Reigns. We saw Cody and Roman Reigns have their first confrontation on Friday Night SmackDown. Cody and Roman heading to WrestleMania. I think that's going to be a really good match for all the different storylines. I think Cody and Roman, obviously, being the same age, kind of coming from being both second generation, wrestlers, there's a lot of stuff to build upon there. They obviously marketed that, in their competition, their angle with Roman basically said that, I'm the son your dad always wanted. And I've always been a main eventer. You haven't ever competed for a main event title. And Cody then basically, emotionally charged kind of response saying that, this will be his time, uncrowned, right? That's been kind of a running theme of Cody since he's won the Royal Rumble. So, I think it's great, but I do hope Sammy does get kind of back in that championship mix somehow. It was great how they concluded the show, which was Sammy as kind of, being able to, beat both members of the bloodline currently with Jimmy beating Jimmy as well as Solo. Shout out Rikishi, right? Those are both his boys. I met Rikishi, right, in November. But yeah, anyways, I mean, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff at WWE right now. I'm really interested and compelled as a fan just to see, kind of where they take this Sammy and where Cody kind of, if Cody's able to beat Roman. I mean, it does seem like all signs are pointing to Cody beating Roman at Mania. I mean, I'll probably bank on that if I had to. But yeah, I do hope that, that they definitely cash in on this because it's definitely exciting, right? Outside of that, UFC, right? John Jones was able to beat Cyril Gane for the heavyweight championship last night by submission in the first round. Francis Ngannou went on Twitter, basically talked about, congrats Johnny, from the heavyweight king. Some fans basically stated that, John Jones was a lot more technical in his domination over Cyril Gane, whereas, Francis was, had to use all 5 rounds. But I think one thing that you have to kind of consider is that, Francis obviously was fighting on injured knee, right? I think if Francis was fully healthy, we could have seen a similar performance, if not just as dominant, if not better than what Jones displayed last night. Then again, Jones has obviously one, if not the greatest MMA artist, of all time, right? So, he basically proved that, last night by winning, being one of, a select few, number of champions to win in multiple divisions. In my opinion, I still think Khabib, if not, GSP, just because of, how they're fighting and, obviously the outside of the ring stuff, obviously, I mean, outside the octagon stuff, the PEDs, the drug use, all the controversies Jones has kind of been involved with. I do think that I mean that there's it does have to be factored in, only because we talk about greatest of all time, you got to consider those as well. Obviously, if strictly speaking as an athlete, right, Jones is there. It's almost it's basically unfair, right? Because you never really seen an athlete with this much size and this much technique advantage, over all of his opponents. So, I mean, I think, moving forward, we'll see kind of, what happens with the heavyweight division. I think it's a little weak right now because I think outside of Stipe, I don't know who's really competing in the heavyweight division. So, I mean, but anyways, I mean, congrats to John Jones. Dana White, obviously, and I mean, I guess, anyone who follows Dylan Dennis on Twitter, I don't know why he's it's really kind of hard to follow, isn't it? Dylan Dennis on Twitter. I was following him and I thought it was entertaining. Now it's just kind of cringe. So, I mean, anyways, moving onwards, I mean, we'll see what happens with John Jones. We'll see what happens with the heavyweight division UFC. We'll see what happens with WrestleMania coming up. It's gonna be on my birthday. Yay. And then obviously with the Niners and obviously with the Kings, NFL draft coming up next month. The Kings obviously, wrapping up, this last stretch, of the season before the playoffs start also next month. So April's gonna be pretty lit. I'm not really following March Madness too much. Obviously, I'm sure everyone has their brackets. There's a lot of bracketology pages, that on Twitter who are basically marking that. So we'll see, obviously how it all shapes out. And outside of sports, right? I mean, the economy, they say inflation is basically decreasing. I don't know. I mean, prices still look the same. So not gonna get political, but hopefully we see, things turn around for the better, for economy, for economic purposes, and actually not to even be political, but one of my teachers back in high school, my econ teacher said the president gets too much blame or credit for the economy. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, right? But I do think that, whenever the economy is in a downturn, people do tend to switch the other direction, right? So anyways, that's pretty much it. Quick and dirty Sunday episode. It was great catching up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Free to share, subscribe. I'll be back on. Not sure when, hopefully soon. But yeah, anyways, let's go Kings. And peace out, y'all. Have a great rest of the weekend.